Chapter 1. Hired to kill Escobar. With Pablo Escobar's enemies finding him difficult to capture or kill, the godfathers of the Cali cartel turned to their head of security for ideas. Over 6 feet tall, Jorge Salcido towered over his peers. The softly spoken ex-army officer had short dark hair, thick eyebrows, a well-trimmed moustache, and a firm gaze. He was a family man, with degrees in mechanical engineering and industrial economics. Early in his career, he had designed forklifts and other machinery. His father was a retired Colombian army general and a diplomatic figure. Regarding himself as more of an engineer than a soldier, Jorge had become an expert in electronic surveillance, which had drawn him into counter-terrorism assignments. In a previous job for the military, financed by the Medellin cartel's gacha, Jorge had worked with us mercenaries based in the UK. Enticed to Colombia on the pretext of fighting communism, we had found ourselves participating in a turf war with guerrillas over cocaine labs. Having been paid so well, we were enthused about doing more work in Colombia. As detailed in his book, Dirty Combat, Dave Tompkins received a call from Jorge in February 1989. "Are you prepared to come back for another mission?" "Yes, subject to terms and conditions." With coiffured grey hair, dark brows, narrow features, and a tattooed arm, Tompkins was a demolitions expert and soldier of fortune who gravitated towards the hotspots of the world. His career had started in Africa. In Afghanistan, he had fought with the Mujahideen, in Croatia with warlords, and in Uganda he was involved in a plot to assassinate President Idi Amin. In Angola, a mine had exploded on him. After a medical operation, his wounds had deteriorated into near gangrene. Back in the UK, he had been hospitalized. 2 days later, when the nurses came to dress his wounds, they found that he had returned to the battlefield. On February 13, Jorge greeted Tompkins at the Bogota airport. "Your prospective clients," Jorge said, "are a group of businessmen whom Pablo Escobar has sworn to kill. The Medellin cartel has engaged in a bombing campaign against their business interests. They live in Cali, which is Colombia's third largest city. More than 30 bombs have exploded in their Drogas La Rebaja chain of 350 stores. Why has Pablo Escobar targeted them?" He pressed Jorge into revealing that the clients were the Cali cartel. The express purpose of the mission was to kill Escobar. Although the mission had no official government backing, the authorities had blessed it. In England, I received a visit from Tompkins. Although he was an excellent businessman, he wasn't ex-military, so I was needed to organise the tactical stuff. As a former paratrooper, SAS regiment soldier, South African sergeant major, and Rhodesian SAS soldier, I was highly respected among the mercenaries. Back then, I was built like a tank, with hardly any neck or hair. On February 24th, we flew to Colombia. In Cali, we were situated in a heavily guarded 5-star apartment. We had our own bar, en-suite bathrooms, and money-counting machines. After we showered, land cruisers took us to a little town outside Cali called Hamunde, which Cali godfather Pacho controlled. The 4 godfathers arranged to meet us in a private sports facility, with a swimming pool, gym, sauna, and running track. After getting into a complex surrounded by sheet steel fencing and through security checkpoints, we were escorted to the godfathers, who were sat around a table with drinks, wearing tailored shirts, designer trousers, Gucci shoes, and modest watches, made by Cartier or Rolex. In a Sergio Tacchini sports suit and with designer stubble, Pacho looked the youngest. Chepe wore overalls and no socks. A long-sleeved shirt hid his skin condition. As the godfathers spoke in Spanish and us in English, Jorge translated. Discussing the operation, the godfathers were relaxed and congenial, as if it were just another day at the office. Tompkins extracted a cigarette and scanned the room for ashtrays, but there were none. "Can I?" Miguel shook his head and his face puckered. The Godfathers had zero tolerance for substances being used during work. Jorge explained that Miguel was allergic to smoke. At lunchtime, the front gates let in a 3-ton open-back truck with over a dozen policemen. Their presence soothed our concerns about the authorities interrupting the meeting. They had come for lunch, courtesy of the gentlemen of Cali. Jorge got on a radio and equipment was brought for us to examine. Night vision goggles, low-cost bugging equipment, Desert Eagle guns, crossbows, and a sniper rifle. Tompkins rolled his eyes at the inadequacies. Addressing the Godfathers, he started to ask questions from a list he had formulated. As the cartel didn't know Pablo's whereabouts, Tompkins said that he couldn't act without real-time info on Pablo's location. "How long will it take for you to find Pablo?" Gilberto asked. "With what you know, how long do you think it will take?" "A couple of weeks." Disturbed by their ignorance of the mission's complexities, Tompkins restrained himself from shaking his head. He needed much longer than 2 weeks. "I'll bring a team with all the military skills required to complete this mission. These people are presently highly paid in various parts of the world. I can't calculate how long it will take to complete this mission, but we need to be paid in accordance with the risk. To finance the initial 12-man team, I need a 3-month advance payment. No matter how long the mission takes, all payments are to be for a minimum of 3 months, with an operational bonus payment to be discussed when the mission plan is formulated." After holding the gaze of each Godfather, Tompkins asked for $1 million. Without hesitating, Gilberto said that amount was no problem. If they killed Pablo, they would receive up to $3 million, plus a bonus. Tompkins could barely contain his excitement. More weapons arrived in the night, including submachine guns and shotguns. The next day, Tompkins and I were flown over Pablo's Hacienda Nápoles Ranch. We took pictures of the huge building with terracotta roof tiles, an airstrip, 2 helipads, a lake, swimming pools, various other buildings for guests and bodyguards, a soccer field, a tennis court, aircraft hangars, a bull ring, and a massive satellite dish. The perimeter was protected by steel fencing and thatched roof guard towers. Barriers to entry included trees, shrubs, and lakes. Bodyguards lived in an L-shaped building, which contained a museum with the early 1930s Cadillac, reminiscent of Al Capone's. Surveying the location made us realize the magnitude of killing Pablo. We left Colombia to recruit a team, but kept the mission a secret from them. We chose some ex-members of the Special Air Service, SAS, a special forces unit of the British Army, and a couple of ex-South African reconnaissance commandos, some of whom he had worked with. The younger ones were lean, fit, and muscular. They weight-trained constantly and ran long distances. The older ones were stocky, worldly wise, scarred from bullets and shrapnel, and hardened by experience, their bodies ravaged by combat and booze. One had a scar from knee to ankle from an ill-fated parachute drop. In the UK, Tompkins went on a shopping spree. Cartel cash paid for bugging kits, radio scanners, frequency counters, direction-finding equipment, portable searchlights with infrared lenses, infrared markers with strobe lights visible to night vision equipment, and medical equipment, including tracheotomy sets and inflatable splints. A security guard at Heathrow Airport allowed his bulky luggage onto the plane without any questions asked. Jorge did the same for his luggage in Colombia. Settling into apartments in Cali, we were warned to be vigilant, as kidnapping was common. Soon given arms, we were advised not to take them outside. "We'll be moving to another place soon," I said. where we can start our training. While we're here, don't go around in more than twos or draw any attention to yourselves. You must behave in a touristy manner. At the morning meeting, I chastised 2 men for getting drunk the previous night. Our mission is to kill Pablo Escobar, I said. It's called Operation Phoenix. We analysed pictures of Pablo and aerial photographs of Hacienda McAleese. Using maps, we planned various reconnaissance routes. Jorge said that any reconnaissance in the vicinity of Hacienda McAleese would be reported to Pablo, whose guards would swoop down on the pale-faced strangers. Using radios, the group tuned into conversations between traffickers and producers. The Spanish was translated by a skinny Colombian from New York who worked for the Godfather Chepe. Exotic women and disco bars in busy Cali distracted some of our men, so we relocated to a heavily guarded hilltop retreat frequented by one of Miguel's wives. It included a leisure complex set on 30 acres of gardens with ornamental bridges and streams. Maintenance men tended the Japanese garden. We swam in the pool, sweated in the sauna, and had access to horse riding, tennis, indoor bowling, and quad bikes. Our food was prepared by a female chef. Refraining from alcohol, we drank crates of Coca-Cola. Worried about the luxury softening our men, Tompkins and I enforced a strict discipline. At 6 a.m, a mandatory run around the track commenced, followed by breakfast. Then came weight training, volleyball, and other activities. To divide the men into sections, a secret ballot was held to nominate leaders. The men were instructed to write down the name of the man they would most want to be in a foxhole with during a crisis. After a month, Tompkins and I were transported to the cartel's offices in a suburb of Cali called Garden City. In his typical low-key style, Gilberto ran the business from a complex of single-story terracotta buildings. His weapons of choice were phones, fax machines, telex machines, typists, and secretaries. We were escorted to a workshop, which received incoming goods. Refrigerators were unpacked, and their back panels removed to reveal weapons manufactured in America that had travelled via Mexico. They were hidden in the false floor of a van, which was activated by tilting the vehicle to one side. We were delighted with the weapons shipment, an assortment of guns, anti-tank rocket launchers, C4 demolition charges, ammunition, and night vision equipment. With the new arms, we performed a week of drills until everything was second nature. We practiced repelling attacks by helicopters and nighttime raids by Pablo's men. At a remote hilltop farm, we did drills with live ammunition, machine gunning down imaginary enemies. On our way back with our weapons, we went to a village bar. A policeman on a motorbike noticed us and stopped. Approaching, he observed our black combat boots. After he spoke in Spanish, one of our escorts from the cartel intervened. Toting a mini machine gun in a shoulder bag, Mario was ex-army, so he displayed his military ID. The unimpressed policeman yelled in Spanish, and both men argued. Some of us started to move towards the truck to get weapons. Jorge told us to stay put and not to do anything drastic. Mario produced a radio and made a call. A man showed up on a motorbike with a bag of cartel cash. Mario gave the bag to the policeman, who departed. In the second month, one of the South Africans quit as he believed an attempt to kill Pablo was a suicide mission. Tompkins flew to England for a replacement. The Cali Godfathers hosted lunches for Tompkins, me and our 2 chaperones, Jorge and Mario. Gilberto assured us that Pablo had been seen in many places, but we viewed the information as stale and of no tactical value. We stayed focused on Hacienda McAleese. Jorge and Mario provided detailed information about the property and military and police reports on attempts to capture Pablo. After processing the info, we realized that some of our earlier assumptions were wrong. Originally, we had intended to land on the soccer field, but as we examined the photos under a microscope, we spotted anti-helicopter wires on the field. The helipads were wired. The only option was to land on a tennis court. A jungle cabin 50 miles west of Calais was transformed into a base camp. Built on wooden piles, it had a big room with tables and benches, a kitchen and bathroom. Animal skulls adorned the back wall. An electric generator pumped water from the Manguito River. The cabin was equipped with a cook, a barbecue, mosquito nets, mattresses, cooking appliances, and food and drinks by the time we arrived by helicopter. To avoid getting kidnapped by guerrillas, we took turns on lookout duty. A Huey helicopter arrived for the assault, which we painted emerald and white to appear to belong to the Colombian police, complete with a Colombian flag under its tail rotor, and Policía Nacional on both sides of the fuselage. The jungle drills included firing rockets and detonating grenades. On the beach, we shot at the river and killed imaginary enemies. We rehearsed landing at Hacienda McAleese and bringing in additional helicopters by using coloured smoke. Yellow meant safe to land, whereas red indicated landing in hostile fire. Using maps, we chose emergency rendezvous points in case we had to evacuate the mission on foot because the helicopters had been damaged. If that happened, we would broadcast emergency radio transmissions to aircraft circling above. We sprayed a Hughes 500 helicopter olive to match military colours and altered the doorway to accommodate a mounted machine gun. Previous raids from the air on Hacienda McAleese had met with no resistance. Pablo's staff had even offered refreshments to the authorities. The plan was to deceive the staff with the helicopters and to mow them down with machine guns before the mercenaries were spotted. Explosives would be dropped along the front of the main house. Upon entering the property, any locked doors would be blown open with C4 explosives. We received black ski masks and combat vests with special pockets to hold equipment, such as grenades and radios. Backpacks were stocked with emergency supplies, such as civilian clothes and medical emergency shock packs with syringes and morphine. By the 4th month, Pablo's location was still unknown. Torrential rain trapped us in the cabin, where we sweated, blanketed by humidity. Tompkins and I were summoned to give a progress report to the Godfathers at a ranch belonging to Chepe, surrounded by cattle fields. Chepe's recently constructed mansion still had protective sheeting over its windows. We arrived at a massive front door with Doric columns. About 60 armed bodyguards were on duty. Others were playing soccer. Gilberto revealed that although there had been no sighting of Pablo, he knew that he was going to hold a family party at Hacienda McAleese. It would be large, and he would definitely be there. Although pleased that the cartel finally had info about Pablo being at a specific location at a certain time, we declined the opportunity because there would be women and children attending, and they would get killed by machine gun fire. In ski masks and camouflage gear, we resumed drills by the cabin. We practiced launching assaults with rockets and grenades. From helicopters, we fired machine guns at the jungle. Practicing so much gave us a permanent stink of guns and gunpowder. Equipment was adjusted after weaknesses were exposed, and flimsy combat vests were replaced. Months of rehearsing, as if our lives depended upon it, fine-tuned the operation, but some of the men were exhausted. Jorge flew all of them, except for me and Tompkins, to Panama City for a break. They partied in clubs and bars and took a scuba diving course. With the team absent, we requested a meeting with the Godfathers. We were transported to a luxury home where we constructed a model of Hacienda McAleese. We dangled aircraft from threads attached to the ceiling. We positioned helicopters on poles so that we could replicate flights by hand. After we rehearsed the mission, we requested the Godfathers. The Godfathers and 4 senior cartel members entered and sat down. Explaining what was about to happen, we spoke in English, which a translator converted. We demonstrated the assault and ended with Pablo getting killed and us leaving safely. Gilberto stood and clapped, immediately joined by the rest, which delighted us. Speaking in limited English, Chepe said that he would pay us an additional $1 million if we fetched Pablo's head. For that price, we agreed to make room on the helicopter for a piece of Pablo. On June 3rd, 1989, we awoke as usual to the cawing of jungle birds. We swore at each other in a comradely fashion. Armed with guns, we went to the river, which was our toilet. Hours later, our radio came alive in coded Spanish. Pablo Escobar was at his swimming pool at Hacienda McAleese. Gilberto gave the go-ahead for the operation, which required 2 Huey helicopters. As one of the Hueys was getting repaired in Brazil, Gilberto proposed that a smaller Hughes helicopter be used. As the lone Huey would have to be overloaded to compensate for the missing helicopter, Tompkins and the pilots objected on safety grounds. Having waited so long to get Pablo, Gilberto overrode the objections. He told the pilots to figure out how to handle the extra load. A pilot agreed that it could be done by redistributing the passengers and cargo. Gilberto ordered them to go, as it might be their only chance, and he announced another change. As soon as the mercenaries had landed and launched the attack, a plane was going to land on the opposite side of Pablo's ranch, with over a dozen hitmen sent by Pacho, who had a score to settle with Pablo. The excitement was palpable as I told the team to get ready. The men cheered and grabbed battle gear. Steel clunked and rattled as each of them checked their equipment, which was double-checked by another man. They tested their radios. An hour later, I addressed the men with a final briefing. I have color-coded the areas of Pablo's mansion, which I've divided into 3 sections. The back of the house is black. The right of the house is red. The front is white. Once inside, the house team will advise me in the gunship which section they're in, and they'll call out their position as they move. The support group will target the area 1 section ahead of the position of the house team. The gunship will act as an aerial stop group that can eliminate runners into or out of the building. I have 300,000 pesos emergency money for every man in case you have to make your way to an emergency rendezvous point. Helicopter blades swooshed. The Hughes 500 buzzed like an angry bee. Let's do it, I said. Packed into the helicopters, we sat cramped amid weapons, explosives, ammunition and fuel tanks. Before noon, the helicopter set off on a 2-hour journey to a refuel site, 10 minutes from Hacienda McAleese. We were quiet and focused as we fine-tuned our minds to the task of killing Escobar.